between March and April, and there's just been a little bit of a backlog. But there's been many successes in terms of that. But again, community apathy still remains a problem, and community participation still remains a problem. And we only feel that we need to come out and talk and participate in events and in community awareness programs if something affects us. So that mindset needs to change as we go along.
So, what are you saying? Are you saying that these AGMs are not well attended by the public?
Now, the AGMs are lukewarm. People seem not to show an extreme interest in the manner in which it varies from area to area, and some are well attended, some are sort of not so well attended. So there's a bit of an even spread across. But what I'm really saying is that apart from the AGMs, is that communities need to start working with the sub forums and start creating those awareness programs, start creating community participation, because we have a tendency to sit back and wait for something to happen. We have a tendency or rather, we like to be complacent instead of being proactive. And the mentality of being reactive needs to change. From being a reactive citizen, we need to be proactive and start finding programs and implementing changes in our communities before something affects us.
Well, certainly, Mohammed, and we know in the last year or so, there's just so much that has happened at community level. We know last year what had happened with all the looting and all the problems that had taken place, and that raised many an eyebrow. This time round, we know about the KwaZulu Natal, the floods as well. Now, these are all issues that impact on communities, and it does appear as if the only time communities wake up is when we see a catastrophe or we see the type of devastation we've seen with both the looting and the flooding that had taken place. But it requires consistency, and this is, I think, the point that you are raising as well. Is communities need to be consistent and to show their interest in these matters, particularly looking at community forums like eThekwini Secure as well. The AGM is a starting point. People need to understand what the forums are basically doing throughout the year, what they've achieved, what are the plans going forward, looking at vision, and also more importantly, just generally looking at the well-being of a community so that communities can stay healthy and all their issues or all their needs are being taken care of.
Absolutely. Now you brought up two important points. Something happens suddenly, and when something happens suddenly, we need to know how to handle it. The floods happen suddenly, the looting happens suddenly. But then, on the other hand, preparing yourself on knowing how to handle these things when it does happen. So you need to look at empowerment programs. So, for example, if as at eThekwini Secure and as community police forums, you then partner with other community organizations. You partner with perhaps maybe the municipality, and you check with paramedics. Do first aid courses. Do rescue courses. See how it is that you can now enable yourself as ordinary people who can come out into the street and offer these kind of services. So you need to know how to go into a building when before it's become structurally compromised, how not to do things, how to rescue somebody, and these are the skills that we need to empower ourselves as we go along. So that I also sit on a committee in the municipality, and there is programs that they're going to be implementing coming soon, hopefully inshallah soon, where community members through CPF structures can empower themselves with skills that would help the rest of the community when it comes to a sudden flood, when it comes to any other uprising or anything that affects the community. So we need to know how to deal with these things and help others to help others, and we can have a very strong base and a very strong network as we go along.
Yes, that skills base is absolutely critical, and we've seen that even during the height of the pandemic, where many people, fell sick and people needed treatment at home or they needed supplies, whatever they needed at the end of the day, oxygenators, and we've seen how the type of service CPFs can render because we've seen so much happen at that time and that pandemic as well. So when we're talking about skills, and I think this is something that's very, very important. Sometimes we don't realize how critical these skills are, because we cannot obviously rely on the government or go to the private sector all the time. There may be many local issues, and you know uh, uh, immediately, and the urgency would require for someone with those type of skills. And it's not only about things like rescue efforts and that, but there are many more issues. Psychologists, for instance, because we know they are victims of crime. We see so much trauma that is taking place. People lose lives. People, you get disasters that sometimes take place in communities. So when we're talking about skills, we're talking about a broad spectrum of skills, and through organizations like the CPFs, this is where one can build the type of capacity that communities need, Mohammed.
Absolutely, it's very, very important because that skill set will take you a long way. They say that knowledge is power, but it's not actually applied knowledge is power. So we need to get this knowledge and we need to apply it in terms of what we need to do. And then, of course, we need to improve our communication skills because with technology, things have changed. So we use a thing called Zello, and the Zello app worked absolutely wonderfully during the floods, and we were in constant communication with various people, various stakeholders, people who were on the same Zello platform. And when one member was calling for assistance somewhere else, somebody else could then, or the controller could relay the messages to say there's a particular person who needs assistance, trying to get somebody out from a flooded area. But at the end of the day, you spread very, very thin. But communication is key, and if we also upskill ourselves when it comes to communication, that goes a long way. So it starts from the bottom up. So state of structure has to be very, very important in terms of what we want to achieve at the end of the day.
Yes. Now, Mohammed, let's just once again reinforce the AGMs that we've been talking about, the attendance, and just to provide some guidelines to communities and to people with regard to these AGMs in terms of when they are going to be held and what they can expect.
Uh, we almost out of the period of AGMs. There's very, very few stations still having it. And if you do see one coming up in your community, contact whoever is the people handling it or the station commander. Check when it is. Attend. Look at the people who have been doing the work in the past. Give them the support. Check where it is. Let's get community activism going again. Because if we're not active communities, if we're not active citizens, we can't have a successful community police forum, or you can't have a successful organization like eThekwini Secure, or whatever organization is that you sit on. So community participation is very, very important. Many stations are at the end again, like I was saying, of the AGM period. Many have had it. I think there's still about two or three who might be out that might be outstanding. But check what's happening. If it's done, it's done. Go to the sub forums, check who's on the sub forums, become part of the patrollers program, become part of the neighborhood watch program. And one of the very important things that we always spoke about is a campaign called "Get to Know Your Neighbor." And many of us look in traditional communities, in traditional areas, for example, like in Asia, everybody knew everybody. And as generations sort of changed and people moved out of areas, you're moving into areas where you don't even know who your neighbors are. High walls separate you, and when there's an incident, you might not even know what's been going on. So get to know your neighbor, make street registers, have your own WhatsApp groups going on, have your own Zello channels going on, so you can stay in constant communication. And start with one street at a time to start getting your communities to become safer communities. And where we want to return to normality, where children can play soccer on the street and play cricket on the street. You remember those old days in night where we used to make those makeshift goalposts and makeshift
Exactly. Yeah.
play. We, what has happened to that way of living? It's gone. It's dead. Even
Mm.
the traditional taking a plate of biscuits to your neighbor on the day of Eid or Diwali or whatever it is gone. We've lost that tradition. We need to try and bring that alive again. And through community participation, it can be achieved. Get to know your neighbor. Say hello. Just give a phone call. Salam. I'm Mohammed next door. Let's meet over a cup of tea.
Yes, Mohammed, in fact, very, very important. And I think this is something that we will be talking about as well. And I think that is something that we've lost. And the scary part is looking at the next generation. I think our generation, we still had that type of engagement and that type of involvement. But we need to re-inculcate this and looking at the new generation and generations to come as to how important this is. Because, if something does happen, to anybody, before even your family gets there, the first person you would call is your neighbor. And that is why, as you said, get to know your neighbor. It's absolutely critical. It's important.
And it's Islamic as well,
Well, certainly, Mohammed. Mohammed, well, Jazakallah for that and for your time with us this morning. Inshallah, we'll be talking to you guys once again next week. Is there anything else you wish to add?
I just wish that everybody, we've come through a very difficult period, and I wish everybody well, and let us unite as a community because that's very, very important. We don't want to be split. Again, in case we had the floods, we've had the looting, and inshallah, we want to come together as communities and strengthen our base. We need to work from the bottom up. That's what we need to do, one street at a time, and then spread that kind of, the environment of unity and the return to normality in our communities. And that's what we need to do.
Well, shukran for that, Mohammed. We wish you all the best, inshallah. Jazakallah for your time as always. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Mohammed Batman Ismail joining us, eThekwini Secure this morning. Next up, we are going to listen to Saint Bika, Din al Islam. A lot more still to come. We're still talking with Karin Duplessis, journalist at Daily Maverick. We also have got Iman Kaba joining us, unpacking the Eid lunch 2022. A lot more to come right until 10 a.m. Yeah, on News and Views on Salam Media. Stay with us.